Hey guys, my name is Rachel and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. Today I'm talking about pruning, or sometimes called topping, your peppers. I'm going to show you how to prune your peppers and also talk about why you may or may not want to prune your peppers in certain circumstances. So last year I actually made a video very similar to this, and last year was my second year pruning peppers. And now here in my third year I have a little more experience and a little bit more wisdom from that experience to impart to you. Last year, I was still under the impression that pruning is always a good idea. So the initial idea behind pruning your peppers is that when you cut off the top of the peppers, which is why it's sometimes called topping your peppers, then all of the little crooks where the leaves meet the stem will push out new growth, and you'll end up with a bushier pepper plant than if you hadn't topped it. Often what that means is that you have more branches, which means more flowers, and theoretically more peppers. And that seems like a good thing, right? Do you want more peppers on every plant? But in my experience, there is a bit of a trade-off here. You don't get something for nothing, and what I have found in my experience in my garden is that when you top a pepper plant that produces larger peppers, say like a bell pepper plant, then even though you do get more peppers, those peppers are smaller than what they might have been if you hadn't topped your plant. And so I found that some peppers do really well with this, and some peppers do not. So mainly what I'm noticing is that peppers that produce larger fruit, such as a bell pepper type, isn't going to do as well with topping as a smaller producing type pepper, such as a Tabasco or a Cayenne. And this may or may not be true for all pepper plants. I haven't grown all types of pepper plants, but in my experience so far, topping peppers that make bigger fruit doesn't do as well as topping peppers that make smaller fruit. For example, last year I grew a Zulu pepper. So that's supposed to be a purple bell pepper type, and the average fruit size is supposed to be 3.5 to 4 inches long. And what I found was on my topped plants, the pepper sizes I was seeing were more like 2 inches on average. They were very small little fruits, and there was a lot of them on the plant. And my suspicion here is that there's a finite amount of energy in your plant, and when your plant is trying to produce larger fruit and a lot of it at the same time, there might just not be enough of that energy and nutrients to go around and make all of the fruits as big as they otherwise might be. However, on the other hand, when I looked into people's experiences online, I found that some people have the opposite experience, where pruning a large pepper producing plant produces fewer fruit, but that those fruit are larger. Now, all I'm seeing from this is that there's obviously a trade-off when you're pruning down a pepper that produces a larger pepper type. And it seems to me like it's probably a combination of what exact type pepper you have, and also probably your growing conditions, and so on and so forth. So my advice to you is just to try it and see what happens. That's really my motto on this channel, is try things and see what happens. It's okay if it doesn't turn out exactly the way that you want it to. And either way, you're gonna get peppers. So it's a win-win, and also you're gonna be learning stuff that will help you in seasons to come. But if you're working with small pepper producing plants, as far as I can tell, topping or pruning is always a good thing. It's going to cause more branching, and you're going to get more peppers. Alright, so I'm going to show you exactly what I mean when I'm talking about topping or pruning and how to do that. So I have here a bunch of peppers that need topping. This one is a good example. So you can see it has this single stem running up the middle, and then in the crooks of the leaves you can see that there are little branches coming out and trying to grow new branches. So the rule of thumb is that you want to leave at least 4 or 5 of these big leaves on your plant so that it can still, do its photosynthesis. And then you want to go in and clip right above that and literally take the top of the plant off. Now, this plant is already starting with its little branching. Some peppers may not when you top them, and that doesn't mean that they won't. I've never seen a pepper that won't push out new growth from those spots after being topped. And actually what topping does, so all of the new growth, or most of the new growth in this plant, is concentrated right here at the top. There are special cells and hormones that are telling the plant to go up. And so once you cut that off of the plant, all of those signals are redirected into these other little points where it knows that it can grow. So I probably would be topping this plant anyway, but there is an extra reason for me to top it. It's been in this container a little too long. Some of you know that I'm moving soon, and so I'm kind of trying to stretch this a little further so that I can put them straight in the ground instead of having to pot everything up and then put everything in the ground. So you may be in a situation like this where you notice that your peppers have started making flowers. And this one's hard to tell because it's still in the itty bitty little bud of the flower forming stage. But if you've got your pepper in a small container like this, what's going to happen is it's going to be reaching the edges of its nutrients, edges of its container, and it's going to be thinking, oh man, I don't have that much space to grow any bigger. I better reproduce before I run out of nutrients and die. And so that's what this guy is doing. And so what I'm going to do is, he's not going to be very happy about this in an evolutionary kind of way, but I'm going to take off the part that's flowering so that it redirects more energy into growing green, which is what it will eventually need and want when I've put it in the ground. So pepper stems are soft enough that you can just do this with your fingernail. You can also come in with some clippers. So all I'm going to do is just come in, make sure I have 5 big leaves, and I'm going to pull the top right off of that plant. And this is a little scary because it looks like I just took a lot of this plant off. But like I said, these little bits right here will definitely grow. Let me show you. I have here one that I topped just a few days ago, and this one didn't have any existing growth in the little crooks at all. And you can see after just a few days, it's already starting to push out some of that new growth. So let me show you on another one. Some of these look really sad because there's some little insect chomping on them. But this one is another good example. This one I topped. And I'll take you in for a closer camera shot of this one. But one of the branches already has grown big enough to start flowering on its own again. And that's a little frustrating, but plants are gonna do what they're gonna do. And once I get it in the ground, it'll be a lot happier. So here's another one that I have that is trying to flower. This is actually 2 in 1 container. This year, unrelated to the topping, I'm trying something new where if both of the seeds sprouted, I'm just going to keep them together. There's a saying that peppers like to hold hands, so we'll just see what happens with these if I don't separate them and instead just plant them in the ground together. But separate experiment. So this one is starting to flower, this one that's a little bigger, and it's not very tall yet. So I'm just going to take the very tip top off of this one. And its little friend has not started to flower yet, so I'm going to leave him be. Somebody asked me the other day why I call plants him, and I don't have a good answer for that. It's just kind of what comes out of my mouth. Peppers, and specifically, are kind of both him and her, because all it takes is one flower to pollinate itself. It doesn't necessarily need another flower from another plant. So these are little he, hers. Anyways, let's see if I have another one that I can show you. Alright, so here is another double pepper plant. Both of these are just barely starting to flower. So again, I'm going to come in and take just the tip off and then do the same on the other one. And so here we have our topped plants. So as I said, do this at your discretion. This is something that you definitely don't have to do. You don't have to top your plants at all if you don't want to. You'll see that sometimes they'll get really tall and spindly if you don't, and top heavy especially, and they might need a little bit more support, but if you don't top your peppers, they will grow just fine. And with some of the smaller producing peppers, you may find that they bush out some on their own anyway. It's just topping is a way of forcing some of that growth early and getting like a bigger, bushier plant in the end. And so with that in mind, another reason that you might want to top, independent of what type of pepper it is if it's getting really leggy. Maybe you didn't give it enough space, maybe when you were starting your seeds the light source was too far away, and now you have a really stretched out leggy plant. That might be a reason to top your pepper, because leggy peppers tend to fall over. But if this has happened to you, you don't necessarily have to top it either, because peppers, like tomatoes, actually will grow some roots off of their stem. They don't do it quite as readily, but I've seen it happen multiple times. So if you want to take a leggy pepper and instead of topping it to make it shorter and bushier, you could pull off some of the lower leaves and in the end plant it deeper, and then it will grow roots out from its stem and all is well. So really my hope for you here is that I have given you the tools to make your own decisions about topping your pepper plants. I don't like to be the one that tells you you have to do things a certain way. I want to give you the tools and the knowledge to figure out what works best in your situation. And I wish that there were more things like that, because there's so many people who will tell you, especially in gardening, like this is the best way or you have to do it this way. And I'm finding that that's just not true. Of course, you're going to get different results. There's also so many variables to take into account with gardening and plants. Life is just unpredictable. You can't get the same exact results twice, even in the same exact circumstances, because life itself is just that variable. So I hope you take away from all of this the knowledge and skills you need to top your plants if you want to maybe do a little experiment and like top half your plants and not top the other half and figure out what works for you. But I will tell you what I am doing this year is I am topping the plants that need it because they've started to flower, and all of my small pepper producing plants, and I'm going to do my best to leave some of my larger pepper producing plants alone, especially the bell pepper types. Alright, and just a couple other things before I go. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Auxhart Gardening. I post a lot of little updates that don't necessarily make full videos. And if you want to keep track of the progress of these peppers, and especially the progress of the new place where they're going, please do subscribe. That way you don't miss those videos, especially the garden tours, where I'll be showing all of these plants every week if I can during the summer. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I wish you happy gardening.